Hello and welcome back to topic 8, where we're going to be looking at adversity and enterprise, and in this particular session we're going to be looking at a case study. So we have two learning outcomes to cover here. So by the end of this topic session you will have explored a case study on the interaction of climate change and entrepreneurship, and you will also have considered how entrepreneurial activity can be developed sustainably in both social and economic contexts in the wider context of climate change pressures. So please make sure that you have read the case study on DARSA, and you can find this in the essential reading folder within topic 8 on Learn. I'm going to spend the next few minutes summarising the case, but this won't be enough, especially if you want to consider the question that I will be asking you at the end of the session as a basis for your individual second formal assignment. So DARSA, as you know, is a small farming village and it's located in the Indian Himalayas. You can see here its surrounding areas. It's very rural, very beautiful, but it's also very reliant on its natural resources for its sustainability. So this is just one of the farms in the village's 14, and you can see that it's still standing anyway, but there are some areas that need mending, although not urgently. So this is some of the pasture area that belongs to one of the farms, and you can see some of the vegetable crops that are being sown. There's also a fairly rudimentary greenhouse there. At one time this was covered with some plastic sheeting. You can just about see some of it left over, and that's been salvaged from somewhere and brought to the village. But currently the greenhouse as a whole isn't being used. Now all the farms are irrigated by something called flatbed irrigation. It's sometimes called flooding irrigation as well. So the water travels down from the mountain from the glaciers. Remember, this village is at very, very high altitude and it relies on its natural water reserves for its sustainability. So the water comes trickling down in these streams, and you can see this one is currently dry. That's because the water has been diverted onto the land of one of the farms. You can see at the bottom left-hand side of your screens there's a pile of stones and cloths. I think on the next slide we can see this more closely. Yes, so the plugs here, these are used to direct and channel the water onto the farmer's land, where it soaks and it irrigates the crops. When the farmer's finished, he removes the plugs and he lets the water flow back out into the stream, and that's ready then for the next farmer to water their crops. The problem is that because the glaciers are retreating, because of climate change, less and less water is flowing in the streams. Now, flatbed irrigation works on the basis of water pressure. In other words, there has to be a fast enough flow of water to adequately reach all the crops. So now there's a problem of a lack of water for all the farms, and this means that crops are of a poorer quality. The solutions are fairly limited. So the village is very, very isolated, remember, and they need to find a solution to sustain themselves sufficiently. The village, especially the women of the village, are determined to keep old traditions alive. In the surrounding areas, for example, there's an abundance of apricot trees. And here you can see one of the women of the village grinding down the kernels, the inside of the apricots, to make apricot oil. Traditional spinning is also being kept alive, and again you can see one of the villagers spinning wool here. And even in this picture, this family picture, you can see how the balance of traditions and modernity are balanced across the different generations. This is a picture taken just of one family. Look at the difference in the clothes that they're wearing. The toddler there, he's in Western clothes, while his mother on the far left-hand side of your screen, she's wearing shalwar kameez. Her mother and grandmother in the centre there, they keep the traditional clothes of the region. So, going back to the problem, well, it's very clear that farming is not sustainable as it stands. The women of the village have taken over the farms, whilst the men often work away in alternative employment. The question here then is, what can the women do to make their community sustainable in light of the adversity from the environmental pressures that they face? Now, at this point, you have a choice. You can either reflect on the question briefly, or you can use this case study as a basis to produce a full strategic plan for the village's survival. I'm more than happy to accept your plan as your second individual assessment. And of course that choice is yours. When you're ready though, you can move on to the takeaway session for this last topic area.